happening during this bye week. Bill, good morning. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Doing good. Let's start earlier this week. What type of prospect did they get in Butte?
Explosive athlete. Right now, I think projects best as a wide receiver. But really, he's just a great athlete. So you could play him on either side of the ball if that's where they want to end up moving him to. If they want to move him at corner, they've got three wide receivers committed in the 2020 class already, all four-star prospects. So with Butte's versatility, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he ended up on the other side of the ball. But like I said, an explosive athlete, one of the top playmakers in the state. And anytime you add the number one player in the state, it's a pretty good day for LSU.
Now, 2020 is a while away. So I guess the question is just like, how much stock are you putting into 2020 commitments? Like, from the LSU coaching standpoint, does their recruiting actually change or lighten up when dealing with these players at all?
Oh, they've got to, especially once they get them on board, they've got to continue to push and continue to go see them and just put the press on them. I mean, recruiting doesn't ever stop. I mean, LSU had the number one defensive tackle in the country, McKinley Jackson, committed in the 2020 class, and now he's completely blown up, and his recruitment's kind of wide open, and he'll probably be similar to like Ishmael Sopsher, where he takes it all the way. He's out of Mississippi, but with those guys, yeah, it's tough to put a ton of stock into it, but when they're from Louisiana, it certainly helps a little bit.
All right, Billy Embody joining us here, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge, 100.3 ESPN Radio down in New Orleans. Ed Ogeron was with us yesterday. He stopped by the quarterback club, or earlier this week on Tuesday, stopped by the quarterback club and was talking about the emphasis that recruiting was going to get this week. From an off week in college football around this time schedule, what's really the process? Is it getting out and seeing prospects? Is it going to games on Friday nights, or is it just the same of texting and DMing?
They're getting out. They're getting out and watching prospects at practice. For example, Dennis Johnson, defensive line coach, was up about 3 hours north of Baton Rouge on Monday, seeing Manny, defensive end, Myron Warren, who's really – his stock has really taken off. I think LSU might be close to offering him. Texas, Tennessee, all of those schools have all jumped in the mix, so it's really kind of becoming a national recruitment there. They were up to see him. He's kind of – I can see him as a down lineman to put on some weight as like he would definitely be a defensive end in LSU scheme, but potentially a kind of a buck pass rusher type guy. So they go out and look at guys like that. They want to see them in person, size them up, see how they practice, turn on their film. I know, for example, Manny keeps their film private during the year, so LSU needs to go up there and see it in person. So things like that. I mean, they go out, and Ed Ogeron went and saw Devonta Lee and Ishmael Sopsher on Monday at A-Meet. So they're doing all of that, and then babysitting, as I like to put it, some of their commits as well. Corey Raymond was over to see Keishawn Butte on Monday.
A couple of LSU commits getting their All-American jerseys here, Billy, as Cardell Thomas and Tyrion Davis just did. They're going to be playing in that Army All-American game. What did they have to say about how they think this 2019 class is shaping up?
So they love it. I mean, Cardell is obviously one of the ringleaders in terms of recruiting other guys. I mean, he's working on Noah Kane. He's working on a few other guys down the line for them as well. And Tyrion kind of takes a little bit more of a reserved backseat approach to it, but he really loved what he saw out of LSU in the Georgia game, the way they mixed it up with Clyde and Nick Brossette, and for two Baton Rouge natives to be in the running, to be in the backfield together like that, teaming up. He really enjoyed that. They will both head to Florida State this weekend to take in the Clemson FSU game on an official visit. They're locked in. I mean, Cardell told me last week that it's not even the staff pitching him anymore. He wants them talking to him like a player. So when you get here and, here's what we do here, and actually including him on things like that. So, I mean, I think both of them are pretty locked in as well.
It seems like a kid who was telling the staff and was telling the media, because we had Marcus Banks on here, that, look, nobody has anything to worry about. He was solidified and committed to LSU, decommitted, and it seems like Alabama is making their play for the four-star cornerback out of Texas. Can you tell us an update on what's going on with Banks?
Yeah, it's an interesting decision from him. A lot of times this time of year when you see a decommitment like that, usually you have a place to go. And right now, I mean, it's very up in the air whether Alabama will have a spot for him. They're in on a lot of elite guys like Jeffrey Carter and Akeem Dent, who's a FSU commit, who they feel pretty good about. So they've got a few guys already kind of slotted ahead of him. Texas A&M, I would think, is kind of the main school I see landing him at this point, unless Bama kind of misses on some guys late.
Talking to Billy Embody here on Off the Bench. Just follow him at Billy Embody. Billy, so I heard you mention Noah Cain earlier. That is something that a lot of people talk about. LSU needs another running back in this upcoming class. There was some hope that maybe after the Georgia game, John Emery might waffle a little bit. Who do you think the realistic name is that could be that second running back?
I think the realistic name is Noah Cain. LSU has a ton of work to do with John Emery. Obviously the winning is helping, and the way they're using the running backs is helping. But I mean, it's Georgia's in there pretty deep, I think, and so I think Noah Cain is probably the guy that ends up in the LSU class. I haven't put a pick in a while, but I think he's one right now that's a pretty good bet to be that second back.
And then so there's been a lot of talk about Ismail Sopsher and what he is going to do. It's looking like a hard Bama lean at this point, in my opinion, just when you look at those recruiting visits that he's been taking. At what point, or what is the strategy with only one defensive lineman in this class? At what point do they look outside of Sopsher and just try to bring in? Because there's already a bit of a depth issue on this LSU defensive line. You need to bring in multiple bodies. How do they handle it?
Sure. Shea actually did a deep dive on kind of defensive line numbers and kind of how Ed Ogeron has stacked his defensive line since taking over, even as defensive line coach. And it's a good read anyway. I think you can find it on our board. But so, for example, they offered Enoch Jackson last night. He's an Arkansas commit out of Mansfield Legacy, just outside of Dallas, Fort Worth area. He's a 6 foot, 290-pound defensive tackle, but is explosive. He's short. I mean, that's the only issue I would see. I mean, if he's 6'3", he's probably a truly national recruit. So they go out and they offer him, and that's, I think, in hopes to get him to come and visit, size him up, and things like that. But they've just got to continue to evaluate senior film and see guys that they like, and then make a move from there. They could go junior college, of course. But I think Ishmael's another guy where Bama has 3 or 4 defensive linemen that they all feel good about, and it's just a matter of who's going to end up being the guy, the couple guys that they add to round out that class. I know they added another defensive lineman commit this week, so it's all kind of fluid with that situation, and we'll go all the way to signing day, of course.
Okay, so you do think that LSU still has a shot at Sopsher?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really do. Just sometimes recruiting numbers just work out a certain way, and that's just kind of how it goes.
Billy, the Bama game is coming up. There were a ton of recruits in town for the Georgia game. Mississippi State game, not as many. That is kind of the calm before the storm. Now you have this Bama game. What are the recruiting plans for this Alabama game?
Well, they're expecting another huge group. The big news that came out is that the number 1 running back in the country, Trey Sanders, will officially visit. Will officially visit for that game. He set that official visit and told us that last week. So he'll be in town. I see him as a very hard Bama lean, but anytime you can get a guy like that on campus and a teammate of LSU offensive line commit Charles Turner and friends with Noah Cain, and they've talked about teaming up in the backfield before, so they'll shoot their shot and see kind of how it goes. But Trey Sanders, the number 1 running back in the country, is really the headliner, and then of course Ishmael Sopsher will be on campus, just to name a couple guys early on here.
Everybody taking advantage of the atmosphere inside Tiger Stadium here of late. Will Wade adds another one into the mix for 2019. Charles Manning, what can you tell us about the junior college shooting guard?
He plays about as hard as anyone I've seen. I watched him in Las Vegas at a big junior college event that they had, and he just plays really hard. He's super athletic. He defends. He can shoot the ball. He needs a little work in terms of, he's not a point guard. He's definitely out more on the wing of the shooting guard position. But he's kind of like Darrell Edwards, but definitely more of an athlete, I would say. Brings that winning edge. I think they were undefeated in conference play last year at the junior college he was at. Shoots the ball really well, like I said. So he'll be a really good natural replacement for Darrell Edwards when he graduates.
C.J. Walker in town last week. How you feeling him?
I like where LSU stands with C.J. Walker. Kentucky made a big push, tried to get into the mix, and I talked to people in his camp, and they reiterated that it's still LSU, Miami, and Oregon are the final three, and we're expecting a decision in early November, and early signing day is right around the corner, and I like where LSU stands with C.J. Walker.
Enjoy the Big Apple. Thanks for the time this morning.
Thanks, guys.